What's up, guys? You are listening to HVAC Masters of the Hustle podcast, and this is your host, J Dub Moneymaker, and welcome to episode 92. First off, Christmas is right around the corner next week, so hopefully everyone has a jolly Christmas with the family and a happy new year. Hopefully everyone's on track to hit their goals for the end of the year, and make sure you guys set new goals as well. As we will talk more about that on this podcast. But I say this every episode. I believe that everyone has a Spartan in them. It's my job, my duty, and my obligation to bring that out in you. And for all my listeners out there that hit me up every week and truly tells me how this podcast brings you and your company to the next level, I love that stuff. So keep them coming. As well as for my new listeners out there, make sure you guys smash the subscribe button, because like I said, this podcast is helping thousands and thousands and thousands of people get to the next level. And do we have a great guest in the hot seat today? He used to be a trainer of mine. He's been on the hot seat before. He's no stranger. Let's welcome Eril Fisaga to the hot seat. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Jay. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. So it's always good to see you. For my listeners tuning in, I go back with Eril, 5-6 years now, maybe a little bit longer, about 6 years. And my first time meeting him was at a training in St. Louis, and he was my trainer. So I'm super stoked to have you back in the hot seat. And tell my listeners a little bit about your experience when you first met me.
Well, I think you saying that I was your trainer is kind of a misnomer there. It was a fun class, and I think what we ended up doing during all of that was somebody else was up there training the class through part of it too. And that was one of your first tastes of being up in front of a group like that, wasn't it?
No, absolutely it was. And I got to tell you, man, being up there, being able to speak to, my peers and everything like that leads me to where I am today, where now I'm my own national sales trainer, traveling the nation, doing my own thing, right? But it all comes from Eril Fisaga allowing me to step up in front of everyone and get out of my comfort zone. So thank you very much.
Well, I've always found it beneficial for others, for them to see those who are succeeding and have the opportunity to see what they're doing. I think that's a big part of how any of us can be successful. We sit there and we emulate those that are killing it. We want to know what they're doing that's different so we can be better at it. So, it's just an opportunity to share that with others too. So probably was a more powerful class than just me standing up there and blabbering on.
And now Eril, for my listeners out there, he's not a trainer anymore. He stepped back from that role, and now he's back at doing, go ahead.
I'm a comfort consultant with Vogel Heating and Cooling in the St. Louis area. We cover just about everything in this area, and we do it all too. So, we're primarily split systems, but like you and I were talking about earlier, I'm running into a lot of mini split opportunities lately. We get a few package units here and there, and lots of boilers. And since it's currently 40 degrees here in St. Louis, it's boiler and furnace season.
Boiler and furnace season, right? And talking about, the year that you had and everything like that, is this your first year back as a comfort advisor, like your first full year?
No, I've been in the role for about 3 years now. This is my first full year with this company. So, there's always that learning curve to understand the culture, see if the sales strategy is any different. How do you fit yourself inside that too? And just keep on rolling with it and keep your head up.
Absolutely. And how has your 2020 been? I know, a lot of people, some people, it's been a roller coaster. A lot of people, it's been a really good year.
It's been a roller coaster. There's highs and lows. You just hold on when you're hitting those steep drops, and then all of a sudden you start working towards, what's next, and something good's going to happen. And like I tell my wife all the time, I just need one more. You get that one opportunity, can turn everything around.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing you just mentioned was, 2020 has been a roller coaster ride for you, as well as it's been for a lot of people in our industry, a lot of my listeners. What's something that Eric does to keep his mindset right?
So, there's always different options for it, but I think if any of us have a true solid base, mine happens to be in the relationship I have with my wife, so that gives me a sounding board to talk about different things, especially if there are things that are bothering me. But from a mindset perspective, that falls back on me, and so it's making sure that I take the time to, I don't even know if I want to call it a meditation, but just to reflect. And that's a daily thing, reflect where I'm at, put a plan together and keep on working that way. I'm still a pretty avid reader. I've got 2 of them going on right now. And, it's kind of funny the way I look at it. Like, I've got one book that I'm reading that is the question behind the question, and that's going to better me in my interactions with everybody that I meet with on a day-to-day basis. Make sure that I'm offering the right things to homeowners and doing it in a way that speaks to what they're really looking to accomplish. The other one is more of a mindset book. I'm listening to, I don't know, do you have, can you use explicit things? Because the name of the book is explicit.
No, go for it. Go for
I,
it.
I'm listening to Unfuck Yourself right now because
Oh,
it's that time of year where we're starting to plan for the next year. So I want to make sure my mindset's right.
I got a couple of his books. And I know you're a big reader. That's one thing that you and I talked about in the training program. And I believe you gave me this book. Am I right?
I believe I
If
did.
not, I think you gave me this book, and I believe you gave me this one.
I can't see that one.
This one is the no asshole rule.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a tough one
Did you
for a
not
lot of
give me
us.
that one?
No, I'm pretty sure I'm behind that
Yeah,
one too.
right. I think you did give me both of those, which I did read both of those. Amazing reads out there. So for my listeners out there, the no asshole rule, right? Or we got the spin of selling. So both very, very good reads right there. Anyways, talking about, numbers and everything like that, at the end of the year, this is something that a lot of us are focusing on right now. A lot of us are pushing in those extra days to hit our final numbers. Where are you at with your numbers on tracking them? And how often should you track your numbers?
I'm tracking mine. I'm tracking mine daily. So I'm trying to figure out where I'm at on a daily basis. And of course there's a run up for the whole year on that too. Um, but again, it's about environment also. And I've been in those sales environments where, everybody knew what their numbers were at all time. This one was a little bit different for me because I had to make sure that I was using the tools possible to track those that way. So I could take a look at this because as I go into 2021, my goals don't just break down for this big number at the end of the year. I've got my monthly, I've got my weekly, and of course, some of that's got to be broken down into a day by day too. And so I find that if I can break them off into smaller chunks like that, it gives me something easier to hit. And I think we've all been there on a Friday looking at the past week going, man, if I could just put another 18, another 20 on the board, I have hit my goal and it puts myself in a really good spot for the rest of the month.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one thing that you just mentioned was prior to this, to keep your mindset right and focus for my listeners that maybe are tracking their numbers and they're on edge with the end of the year coming so close and everything like that, is meditation is something that you said. I'm a big believer in meditation. It's something that I do to kind of just disconnect, right? We all need time to disconnect with what we're doing on with our daily routines of life, with our work schedule and everything like that. And we need to take time to focus on ourselves. I mean, that's huge, right?
Yeah, but I think we're also going to find a lot of us also meditate over a bottle of bourbon or something too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everyone has their own ways, right? So,
That's right.
so I guess however you want to disconnect, but you got to disconnect. You got to find that place. One thing I like to do is go up in the mountains and go dirt bike riding, right? Just have nothing but, snow on the ground, maybe, blue skies up in the air and just the engine just full blast, man.
Mine's
So
become hiking. I like to get the
Hiking.
kids out. We'll go take some small hikes, make a day of it. You're out with nature, and you can't get your head right any better than when you're outside like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to ask you, Eric, what was the biggest thing from going from a trainer back to a comfort advisor? Was there anything that you had to adjust from like a training role and adapt to? Because when you're a trainer, you're dealing with more of the comfort advisors and technicians and business owners instead of the homeowners.
Yeah, I mean the audience was different, but you're still trying to do some of the same things. So as a trainer, when you're in that first morning of training, you look around the room, and regardless of what the audience is, you're trying to figure out: am I connecting with these people? Are they going to take this seriously? Are they going to want to take the information that I have and implement something after the fact? And that's the same thing that we're doing with a homeowner too. So I found that having a strength in my presentation skills that I used when I was training was easily transferable over into working with homeowners. The toughest part is probably the follow up after the fact. If it's not a one call close, you got to stay on top of that, and you have to have a process for that too. So I'd say that was probably one of those things that I struggled to make sure that I put together the right process to get it going with everything. Uh, that was different than the training class, because at the end of the week long training, or however long it might be, you do get some feedback from the participants in there, and you can make these connections and keep in touch with them. Homeowners are a little bit different because they're trying to dodge you at times too, because they don't always want to answer those questions or tell you that they didn't like what you offered or the price that you brought to the table.
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. And talking about, follow-ups and process like that, one thing that I know is, across the board, about 80% of sales professionals don't follow up, right? So being different, that 20%. What is your follow-up process like for my listeners out there that maybe aren't good at follow-ups?
So some of the information's already on the plate for me when I go in there. I've got a phone number, I've got a name, but I also want to make sure that I find any other means of communication while I'm in there too. So a real easy one is, as I've been building proposals, there's a spot on there that asks for an email address. So I just ask across the table for their email address then too. And that gives me at least two different ways that I can start working with somebody. In most cases, that's three different ways, because now we're going to be using email to get something there. We're going to be using phone calls, just the traditional way. And then I also like to use text messages too. And all I'm looking for is feedback. I tell them that while I'm at the table too. There's a sales side to me. I want to make sure that I'm not bothering you, but at the same time, I'm looking for information and feedback to make sure that either we're going to continue to move forward and we can work on this project together, or you can tell me to get lost too. And sometimes that's easier to do via a message. And so I give them the opportunity to do all of that.
Okay. And Eric, let me ask you a question. It's hard to get a homeowner back on the phone. That's probably one of the biggest struggles when it comes to follow up is, how do I get back in front of them? How do I keep that relationship going when it's easier to not just pick up the phone, right? Or not tell them to get lost potentially. What do you think is a good way, or how do you go about getting back on the phone or getting back in front of that person?
So you schedule it the first time you're there. That's the best time. And you don't schedule a phone call necessarily every time. You try to get back in person. So for example, I told you about this revisit that I just went to. That is a revisit. I was not putting numbers together and going to drop him over an email. He does not get that information without
Oh
having
yeah.
to sit there with me. So I actually played this one a little bit differently, because I said, we need to schedule a time. He goes, well, there's going to be a money conversation. I want my wife there, but I don't have her schedule. And I said, well, I want her there too. So we went back and forth a little bit. And then I said, one of two things is going to happen. I'm going to call you, or you're going to call me. And then we're going to put this on the calendar. It just so happened that he called me a little bit quicker than I was planning on calling him. I was going to give him 24 hours and then hit him up. He took about 6, talked to her, got the schedule, and then scheduled everything with me.
Awesome. Awesome. One thing that you said right there, which you dropped a big nugget. And I want my listeners to understand this because this is huge. Because as I travel and I train, this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see comfort advisors and technicians do is give price, right? One thing that you said that they have to sit down with you. They have to earn that price, right? Can you go over the importance of not giving price and what happens when you do give a homeowner a price?
It's the only ammunition as consultants that we have. They'll sit there for 2-3 hours with us sometimes to get to that one number. But once you put that number out there and it doesn't have any value to it, there's nothing else for them to latch onto. It's just the number. So if you leave and they have that, like you said, Jay, you're not getting them back on the phone if they didn't like what they were seeing there. If they didn't see what the other value was, your follow up, you can just keep following up. Nothing's going to happen with that. That doesn't mean don't follow up. That means you got to keep working away to try to get in and figure out what else can change with them, or see if somebody else came in after you and muddied the water some more too. But with that being our largest piece of ammunition there, why do we just give it away?
Absolutely.
Most of us work for companies that offer free estimates, but the turn of this is we're supposed to close a vast majority of those estimates too. So it's free, except it takes my time. And especially if I'm engineering something, it takes more of my time and effort to get it right. And for you to just to take that and give it to somebody else so he can do it for cheaper, well, that's a huge slap in the face. And we don't necessarily have to play that game.
Yeah. And it's funny that you talk about that, because that's what we know they're going to do, right? They're going to take our price. They're going to go to the next guy and they're going to say, this is what his price is, regardless if they say, oh, I'm not going to show him. I was running a training last week in Reno, right? And we didn't even ask for the guy's proposal. All we said was, hey, have you had other contractors out? How many guys are you having out? We were his third one, right? We're walking around the house. We get to the kitchen. He's like, oh, here's their estimate right here, right? I mean, this guy took all the time, all the value to engineer that system potentially, right? Or he just took a shortcut. But
right.
I'll be devil's advocate. He took the time, right? I want you guys to understand that's listening to the podcast. When you give them price and they plan on getting multiple estimates and you don't set yourself up for success and the best opportunity to close the deal, you guys are taking a shotgun and pointing it at your foot and just point blanking it and blowing your foot off. I mean, you can't do that. You absolutely cannot do that.
Yeah, I mean, you're in Reno, so there's some casinos there. I mean, if you just want to go roll the dice, go roll the dice.
I mean, I'd leave that at the casino.
It's hard to be firm like that with a homeowner sometimes too, and I get that. I mean, how are you going to tell them, hey, my price is the only thing I really have that you want? You've got to show me that you want my work, my quality of work, just as bad as I want to put this together for you.
Absolutely. And let me ask you a question, Eric. Talking about follow-ups and everything like that, how many times do you think you should follow up or need to follow up and then stop your following up process?
Until you get information.
Until you get information, absolutely.
That's it. I mean, and that's why I try to have multiple paths. So I met with somebody on Tuesday of this week. He told me he was getting multiple quotes. I was first. He asked me to call him the next afternoon. We scheduled a call the next afternoon. Called him that afternoon, no answer. Left a message. Emailed him later that evening, just to say, hey, I'm just double checking to see if you have any other questions or any other concerns that I can work with you on. I still haven't heard back from him, but he has received now 2 text messages, 2 emails, and 3 phone calls from me.
So one thing that I like to do to sometimes there's 2 ways I go about it. If I keep getting ghosted by a homeowner or a client, I call him and I say, hey, just to let you know, your file came across my desk again this morning. Please call me back. I'd like to know if you'd like to keep your file open or go ahead and close it. Right. So that's a good way to do it because a lot of people don't like to close their file. Right. So if they're still in the market, they're going to keep it open. But then if they're not, potentially they'll call you and close the file. Right. But another good way, so say that doesn't work out now. So if you want to go a little bit further, what you can do is you leave them a voicemail and say, hey, just to let you know, my last call is actually around 4 o'clock and it's actually in your neighborhood. And, I haven't heard back from you and I'm a little concerned. So I'm going to stop by roughly around 6 o'clock just to make sure that everything's okay. Right. And because you're in the neighborhood and they hear that voicemail that you're going to stop by, you're probably most likely going to get a phone call back. But
Absolutely.
the only thing is if you guys don't get a phone call back, go to the call or go to that house. The reason why I say that is because sometimes they get the voicemail and life happens, right? And I've had this where I've left the voicemail, I showed up at the house and they're ready for me to sign paperwork, right? They're like, oh, I just figured that you're coming. You said it was going to be 6 o'clock. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and move forward with it, right? Or you
That's
might just
awesome.
get them to call you and say, hey, I don't want you at my house this evening. We're not going to be here. But then you have them on the phone, right? You could close those doors, ask those questions that you need to ask.
And I find, and I don't know about what you're seeing, but I'm finding, at least in our area here, the one call close is starting to become more and more rare. It's not, and we like to, of course, believe that our market's so much different than everybody else's around the country. But something about here in St. Louis, people shop a lot, even if they've been with a company for a long amount of time too. They continue to look for somebody else, and I don't know if that touch point is necessarily just price, or if it's a lack of value being shown. Um, but it's definitely something to think about. You're going to set yourself apart by making the phone call, dropping the messages, and even more so if you're going to stop by the house. Nobody else is going to pull that off. So
No.
you're going to see an impact in your numbers from making those types of moves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want my listeners to understand right now is we have to be following up. One thing that I said earlier in this podcast was 80% of us don't do it. So as you guys are driving around listening to the podcast right now, think to yourself, are you the 20% that does it and follows up and keeps on it every single time? Or maybe if you follow up, are you just the guy that shoots them an email and then waits for them to call you back? Are you doing it multiple times, right? I know there's good software programs that a couple of people are coming out with, generating the follow-up leads because so many leads are being dropped in between the cracks, right? Because we're not keeping up with it. So you guys make sure you guys are setting yourself apart, being different. And Eric, I got to ask you, brother, what is your goals for 2021?
My goals for 2021 are set right at about $2 million.
$2 million. And what do you have to do to change it from this year? What do you have to do or what do you have to sacrifice?
The follow-up's a big part. Understanding that, and and that's a good question about the sacrifice there, because it's not just my sacrifice either. It is the sacrifice of my wife. I have 4 kids, and
Absolutely.
those bring in other pressures too for their things. But I'm fortunate enough to work in a family-owned company that cares about those types of things. So most of the time, I'm able to say, "Hey, I've got a day where I need to take the kids to the doctor in the morning, so we can block out the schedule and we can make things roll with that." Or, if there's a game or something, I can start to get closer to being home to catch most of those things. So that's always nice. But I think that's always the first part that we need to do. We need to make sure that we have the expectations so we don't have those negative outside influences from what's at home too, because that's a big piece. If your wife's expecting you home at 5 o'clock every night, hell, you're in the wrong job. um,
Yeah, you're in the wrong
I'm I'm
industry.
sitting here at almost 2 o'clock, and my coordinator just sent me a text that says, "Hey, I just dropped a 4 o'clock on you. I'm going to be out late tonight. It's a Friday night, but this is also when we make our money too. It's cold outside. I'm on call this weekend, so it's nice to have a partner who understands that. Hey, you're not going to make it home. I'm going to take care of things. Don't worry about it." Um, my a couple of my kids made a comment to her the other day about how I'm never at home. Now, we've got to think about this in our current COVID climate too. They're always at home. So anytime I'm gone, it feels like I'm always gone. Um, and she said, "You know what? This is what he does. He always comes home to us at night. He's always here in the morning when you wake up. And so you need to take advantage of that time too. And then carve it out for your family. Don't go home working on proposals. Don't go home working on your follow-up. There's a time for that to do that too. I get my kids to bed, then my computer can come out. So you need to be able to have that balance inside your life too. Be able to step away from this and say, this isn't always the most important thing, but this is pretty damn important to begin with because this is how I put the food on the table.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And all my listeners out there, with all the holidays happening, Christmas just, 6 days out, I want to tell everyone truly, I hope that you guys have a great Christmas. You guys have all the spirits with your family, with the New Year's, and you guys set your goals high and everything like that. Eric, what do you want the listeners to get out of this episode of HVAC Masters?
Have
of
a
the
plan.
Hustle?
Put a plan together. I'm sitting here. We've been talking about follow-up. I have my little memo book. I have my planner. I sit down on Sunday night and I look through my open leads from the last couple of weeks, and I put together a hit list. I think these are still lukewarm. These are hot. And Monday morning, get away, start hammering down there. I don't start with my hot leads on Monday morning. I start with the ones that I don't have information on, because if I can get one of those, that's going to be a big bonus. The other ones, I can get to them after that first appointment on Monday too. But have a plan, set yourself up to, you do the same things week in and week out or day after day to make sure that you're successful too. Don't be afraid to pick up that phone or drop an email or a text on somebody, or even if you get to that point, to drop by their house. They owe you. They called you.
Oh, absolutely.
They called you out for something. They owe you an answer on this.
Absolutely. And one thing I just want to end the podcast with, something you just mentioned, was you lifted up your planner, right? I want my listeners to understand this. Very, very important to track your own calls. Every time you leave a call for 2021, make it a game plan to pull down the street. Track your guys' own calls. Follow up. Make sure you guys write down the client's name, the address, if you sold it, if you quoted it, why they didn't buy from you, and when you're going to follow up with them, right? Make sure you guys track your calls. Do not allow the company just to track your calls. You need that stuff in front of you every single day. It's very important for your future and where you guys want to go with your success. So, Eric, thank you, brother, for being in the hot seat.
Happy
it's
holidays,
always an
Jay.
honor. I look up to you. Absolutely, brother. Take care, and happy holidays and happy New Year's, man.
Thank you, man. Merry Christmas.